Stop for a second and imagine walking through a parking lot full of shiny luxury cars. Polished Mercedes, aggressive BMWs, gleaming Teslas reflecting the morning sun, and then your eyes land on a faded 2011 Honda Civic, slightly scratched, a small dent on the bumper, nothing impressive, nothing flashy, nothing that screams success. Yet the man who steps out of that ordinary car is secretly worth over $4 million, and almost nobody around him realizes it. Every morning his co-workers glance at that Civic and quietly assume the same story. They assume about thousands of other people driving modest cars across America, that he is probably struggling, maybe paying bills month to month, maybe saving slowly, maybe hoping for a raise someday, but what they don't see is a quiet portfolio sitting in the background. Index funds compounding year after year, a paid-off house, fully funded college accounts for his children, and the quiet reality that he could retire tomorrow if he wanted. What makes this story powerful is not the money itself, but the choice. Because he is not driving that Civic because he has to. He is driving it because he understands something about wealth that most people never figure out until it is too late. Across America, there are thousands of people who look wealthy but are not, and thousands who look ordinary but quietly control millions. And if you walk through a random parking lot today, there is a very good chance the person with the most expensive car is not the richest person there. This sounds counterintuitive at first, because society has trained us to believe the opposite. We are taught from childhood that rich people drive luxury cars, wear designer clothes, live in giant houses, and signal success loudly so everyone around them can see it. But decades of research into millionaire behavior revealed something completely different, something almost shocking when you first hear it. The majority of real millionaires do not look rich at all. When researchers spent years studying wealthy Americans, they discovered that the median price millionaires pay for a car is barely over $30,000, which means most of them are driving the same vehicles parked in middle-class neighborhoods. Everywhere, Toyota, Honda, Ford, simple cars that blend invisibly into everyday life. Meanwhile, there is another group of people who look incredibly wealthy on the surface, driving $60,000 cars while earning $50,000 a year, financing luxury lifestyles that create the illusion of wealth while quietly destroying the possibility of ever achieving it. One group looks rich, the other group actually becomes rich, and they are almost never the same people. Understanding this difference might be one of the most important financial insights you ever learn, because it changes the way you see every purchase, every lifestyle choice, every moment where the temptation to look successful competes with the opportunity to be financially free. The man with the 2011 Honda Civic understood that every dollar spent trying to impress strangers is a dollar that cannot quietly compound for decades in the background. He understands something most people ignore, that money grows silently, slowly at first, then faster, then explosively over time if you simply allow it to remain invested instead of turning it into status symbols. Researchers who spent decades analyzing wealthy households discovered something fascinating about how wealth actually forms. Nearly 80% of millionaires are first-generation wealthy, meaning they did not inherit their fortunes. They built them slowly through consistent habits. They often live in the same house for decades. They drive practical cars. They shop carefully. They avoid the pressure to upgrade their lifestyle every time their income rises. This is not because they dislike nice things. It is because they understand the invisible cost of those things. Every luxury purchase carries something economists call opportunity cost, which is the wealth that could have existed if the money had been invested instead. The difference between a $30,000 car and an $80,000 car might feel like a simple upgrade in the moment. Leather seats, nicer design, better brand recognition, but when you project that $40,000 difference forward, 25 years at average market returns, it quietly transforms into hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is the hidden math behind wealth building that most people never calculate, because society focuses on what people own today, not what their decisions create tomorrow. A leased luxury car may generate admiration in the present moment, but the investments that were never made because of that purchase might have quietly grown into a life-changing financial cushion decades later. This is why so many wealthy individuals adopt what observers now call stealth wealth, a lifestyle where financial success exists almost entirely below the surface. You see it in unexpected places. Billionaire entrepreneurs who continue driving practical vehicles long after they could buy any car on earth. Investors who wear simple clothes despite having enormous portfolios. Families living in comfortable but modest homes while quietly controlling financial assets large enough to support generations. This behavior often confuses people who assume that money automatically transforms lifestyle into visible luxury. But the reality is far more strategic. Looking wealthy creates problems that invisible wealth completely avoids. When someone appears rich, they attract attention, sometimes admiration, sometimes resentment, sometimes expectation. Friends begin assuming expensive dinners will be covered. Relatives start asking for financial help. Salespeople quietly raise prices because they believe the buyer can afford more. Even criminals pay attention to visible wealth signals when selecting targets. Looking ordinary removes most of those pressures instantly. The person driving the old Honda Civic moves through the world with a kind of financial invisibility cloak, negotiating prices like any other customer, maintaining normal social relationships, and avoiding the expectations that come with visible affluence. There is also a powerful psychological advantage hiding inside this strategy. Visible wealth often creates a strange pressure to keep proving success again and again. The luxury car must eventually be replaced by a newer one. The designer wardrobe must keep expanding. The lifestyle becomes a treadmill where each purchase must exceed the last in order to maintain the same level of social signaling. Invisible wealth removes that pressure entirely. The person who does not compete in the display game never has to keep upgrading their image. Their identity is not tied to their possessions. Their sense of security comes from something much deeper than visible status. It comes from the quiet knowledge that their finances are strong enough to handle almost anything life throws at them. Unexpected medical bills, economic recessions, career changes, opportunities that require risk. Financial independence transforms the way decisions are made because it removes the constant background fear that drives many people's choices. The quietly wealthy individual sleeps better at night not because of what they bought, but because of what they did not spend. And this is where the real power of compound growth appears. Imagine two individuals earning the same income over 25 years. One spends aggressively to maintain a luxurious image, saving only a small percentage of their earnings. The other quietly saves and invests a significant portion while living well below their means. After a quarter century, the difference becomes staggering. The saver may accumulate millions. The spender may still be working paycheck to paycheck despite decades of high income. From the outside, their lives may have looked identical, or even reversed, because the spender appeared more successful for years. But the invisible math eventually reveals the truth. One person purchased freedom, the other purchased appearances, and appearances never compound. This is why the modest Honda Civic in the parking lot represents something far more powerful than it seems. It represents a deliberate decision to ignore social pressure and focus on long-term security. It represents the discipline to prioritize financial independence over temporary admiration. It represents a mindset shift where success is defined not by what people see, but by the options you quietly possess. Because real wealth is not the car you drive. It is the ability to choose how you live your life without money controlling every decision. It is the freedom to walk away from toxic jobs, the freedom to help family when it truly matters, the freedom to spend time the way you want instead of the way your bills demand. The co-workers walking past that old Civic every morning never notice this story unfolding quietly beside them. They see an ordinary car. They assume an ordinary life. They never realize that inside that simple choice is one of the most powerful financial strategies ever practiced. The strategy of looking ordinary while building something extraordinary in the background. And once you understand this secret, you begin to notice it everywhere. The quiet investor who never talks about money, the modest neighbor whose house has been paid off for years, the colleague who saves aggressively while others upgrade lifestyles. They are all playing a different game than the one society encourages, a game where wealth is measured not by what you show, but by what you keep, what you protect, and what you allow to quietly grow for decades until one day you realize something incredible has happened. You are no longer working because you have to. You are working because you choose to. And that simple difference, that quiet freedom, is the real luxury that no expensive car can ever match. The man with the 2011 Honda Civic leaves the parking lot every evening, the same way he arrived in the morning, quietly, unnoticed, blending into traffic with thousands of other ordinary vehicles, moving through the city. And the fascinating part of this story is that if you followed those cars home, you might assume the ones turning into the largest driveways belong to the richest drivers. Yet in reality, the quiet wealth builder often turns into a completely normal neighborhood, where the houses look comfortable but not extravagant, lawns trimmed but not sculpted, garages holding practical vehicles instead of symbols of financial dominance. Inside that house, there are no marble floors imported from overseas and no gold-plated decorations, screaming for admiration. But there is something far more powerful hidden inside the walls of that modest home, something invisible that does not show up in photographs or social media posts, something quietly growing inside investment accounts that most people around him will never see. And that invisible growth is the real engine behind financial independence. While others spend evenings scrolling through online stores, comparing luxury upgrades and imagining the social recognition those purchases might bring, The quiet investor opens an investment dashboard and watches the slow, steady climb of long-term assets. And the numbers do not move dramatically from day to day, which is exactly why most people underestimate the power of what is happening. Compound growth rarely feels exciting in the moment because it behaves like a snowball at the top of a mountain, small and almost unimpressive at first, rolling slowly, gathering a little more snow with each rotation, and yet over time the snowball becomes massive, unstoppable, carrying weight that nobody noticed while it was quietly forming. This is the secret rhythm of wealth building that dopamine-driven consumer culture tries to distract people from noticing, because consumption delivers instant emotional spikes while investing delivers delayed rewards. And human psychology has always struggled to prioritize delayed rewards when immediate gratification is available. Every advertisement you see is carefully engineered to amplify that immediate dopamine hit, showing you beautiful lifestyles, confident smiles, luxury environments, and the unspoken promise that if you purchase the same products, your life will somehow feel more exciting, more respected, more validated by the people around you. But the quiet investor understands that those emotional spikes fade quickly, often within days or weeks, leaving behind only the financial footprint of the purchase and the subtle pressure to repeat the experience with another purchase later. This cycle of emotional spending is one of the most powerful wealth destroyers in modern society, not because people make one large mistake, but because they make thousands of small decisions that feel harmless individually but become enormous collectively over decades. Consider the difference between upgrading a phone every year versus every 4 years, buying coffee daily versus occasionally, replacing a car every 5 years versus every 12, choosing status brands instead of durable alternatives, financing luxuries instead of investing the same money quietly. None of these choices feel life-changing in isolation, but stacked together across 20 or 30 years, they determine whether someone arrives at midlife with financial freedom or financial pressure. The man with the Civic is not avoiding luxury because he dislikes comfort or beauty. He is avoiding it because he recognizes that luxury purchases often behave like financial gravity, constantly pulling money away from the orbit of long-term growth. Every time money leaves the investment ecosystem, it stops compounding. And compounding is the only force in personal finance capable of turning ordinary incomes into extraordinary wealth. When people imagine millionaires, they often picture entrepreneurs who built giant companies or celebrities who earned enormous paychecks. Yet the majority of millionaires in America reached that milestone through something far less dramatic. They simply saved consistently, they invested patiently, they avoided lifestyle inflation, and they allowed time to do the heavy lifting. Time is the silent partner in every successful investment strategy, and unfortunately it is the one asset people accidentally waste the most. A 25-year-old who invests modest amounts consistently may end up with more wealth than a 40-year-old who suddenly starts investing aggressively, because the earlier investor gave compound growth an extra 15 years to operate. Those extra years matter more than the size of the contributions. This is why visible wealth signals can be so misleading, because the people displaying expensive lifestyles often started earning good incomes early but allowed lifestyle inflation to consume the advantage of time. They bought bigger houses as soon as salaries increased. They upgraded vehicles whenever promotions arrived. They rewarded themselves with expensive vacations every time financial stress faded temporarily. Each reward felt justified in the moment because income had increased. Yet the long-term opportunity quietly disappeared in the background. Meanwhile, the quiet wealth builder continued living like someone earning far less, investing the difference instead of displaying it. Over time, the contrast between these two paths becomes enormous. The visible spender experiences financial pressure even as their income grows, because their obligations grow alongside it. The quiet investor experiences increasing security because their assets begin generating returns larger than their contributions. At that moment, something remarkable happens. Money starts working harder than the person who earned it. Dividends arrive without additional effort. Market growth multiplies previous savings. Investment gains begin outpacing yearly deposits, and eventually the compounding engine becomes so strong that wealth accelerates, even if contributions remain the same. This is the stage where quiet wealth becomes truly powerful, because it gives the investor options that visible spenders cannot access. They can take career risks, they can start businesses, they can take time away from work, they can support family members without destabilizing their own finances. They can say no to opportunities that conflict with their values. This freedom does not appear suddenly one day like a lottery win. It arrives gradually, almost quietly, until the moment the investor realizes something profound has changed. They are no longer trapped by financial necessity. They are guided by choice. This realization often happens long before retirement age for disciplined investors, sometimes in their 40s or early 50s. decades before many peers will even begin thinking seriously about financial independence. And the most fascinating part is that from the outside, nothing about their lifestyle appears extraordinary. They still drive practical cars. They still live in comfortable but modest homes. They still dress simply. They still move through the world without attracting attention. But beneath that ordinary surface is a financial structure strong enough to support almost any life decision they might want to make. The visible spender experiences the opposite trajectory. Their lifestyle becomes more impressive over time, but their financial flexibility becomes smaller. Large mortgages require continuous income. Luxury car payments demand steady cash flow. Expensive social environments create pressure to maintain appearances. Eventually, the visible spender becomes dependent on maintaining a high income simply to support the lifestyle they built. This dependence quietly erodes freedom. Suddenly, career decisions are constrained. Risk becomes dangerous. Retirement becomes uncertain. Even minor economic downturns can create serious anxiety, and yet the outward appearance may still look successful. Friends see vacations, expensive restaurants, luxury vehicles, and assume financial security must exist behind those symbols. But appearances rarely reveal the balance sheet underneath. The quiet investor's life may appear less glamorous in comparison, yet their financial foundation is dramatically stronger. This contrast explains why so many wealthy individuals eventually adopt the philosophy of stealth wealth, intentionally minimizing visible status signals in order to protect both their finances and their personal lives. Stealth wealth is not about hiding success out of fear or shame. It is about prioritizing freedom over attention. Attention often brings expectations, comparisons, and pressure. Freedom brings peace. When nobody expects you to maintain a luxurious image, you are free to make rational financial decisions instead of emotional ones. When your wealth is not publicly visible, you avoid attracting unnecessary scrutiny or jealousy. When your lifestyle remains grounded, you maintain relationships built on genuine connection instead of financial perception. In many ways, stealth wealth is the ultimate form of financial maturity because it reflects a shift from external validation to internal security. The person practicing stealth wealth is no longer chasing admiration. They are protecting independence. And independence is the rarest form of luxury in the modern world. It allows a person to wake up each morning knowing their choices are not dictated by financial pressure. It allows them to work because they enjoy the work, not because they fear missing the next paycheck. It allows them to live according to personal values instead of social expectations. The man with the 2011 Honda Civic understands this deeply. Every scratch on that car represents a financial decision made years earlier. Every mile driven in that modest vehicle represents money that remained invested instead of being converted into a depreciating asset. Every co-worker who underestimated his financial position and knowingly witnessed the quiet discipline required to build lasting wealth. And perhaps the most powerful part of his story is that he never needed anyone to recognize his success. The validation came from something far more meaningful than admiration. It came from knowing that his future was secure, that his family was protected, that his time belonged to him. Because in the end, the true purpose of wealth is not to impress strangers in a parking lot. The true purpose of wealth is to buy back control over your life. And the people who understand that truth rarely feel the need to prove anything to anyone at all. The next morning, the same Civic rolls quietly into the same parking space. The engine shuts off, the door opens, and the routine repeats in a way that looks completely ordinary to everyone watching. Yet beneath that ordinary routine sits a philosophy that silently separates two completely different financial futures. One built on visible consumption and one built on invisible compounding. The co-workers who arrive in newer cars, louder cars, more expensive cars, step out with a subtle confidence that comes from being seen, from knowing their vehicle communicates something about status, success, or personal taste. And for a moment, that feeling is real because status symbols are designed to trigger immediate emotional responses in both the owner and the observer. But what those co-workers rarely calculate is the invisible timeline attached to that decision. The months of payments, the insurance premiums, the depreciation quietly eating away at the asset, and the investment opportunities that never existed because the money took a different path. The quiet investor sees that timeline clearly. Every purchase becomes a question. Not simply, can I afford this? But what will this cost my future? This single shift in thinking transforms financial behavior more than almost any budgeting trick or productivity system ever could. Because once someone begins measuring purchases against their future freedom instead of their current income, the entire economy of personal decisions starts to change. Suddenly, a luxury upgrade is not just a nicer object. It becomes a delayed retirement. It becomes extra years of working. It becomes lost flexibility. And when those hidden costs become visible in the mind, Many purchases lose their emotional appeal almost instantly. This is why long-term investors often appear and usually calm around consumer temptations that excite everyone else. They are not resisting luxury through discipline alone. They simply see the invisible trade-off more clearly. They see the compound interest that could exist instead. They see the growing investment account quietly buying them future choices. They see the moment years ahead where they will wake up one day and realize that work has become optional. That realization is the real reward behind every quiet financial decision made along the way. Not applause, not recognition, not admiration, but freedom. Freedom to spend time differently. Freedom to walk away from situations that no longer align with personal values. Freedom to design a life around meaning instead of obligation. And this is why the humble Honda Civic in that parking lot represents far more than transportation. It represents a quiet rebellion against a culture that constantly equates spending with success. It represents a deliberate decision to value long-term independence over short-term approval. It represents the understanding that the most powerful financial strategy is often the one nobody notices. Because in a world obsessed with looking rich, the people who quietly become rich are often the ones who stop trying to look like it at all. And somewhere in the background, while nobody is paying attention, the investments keep growing, the options keep expanding, and the quiet wealth builder keeps moving closer to the one destination that status symbols can never deliver: a life where money no longer controls the direction of every decision.